On July 10, 2023, Ludlow was one of the Vermont towns devastated by a flooding event that came with torrential rains falling on the already saturated area. Among the most visibly impacted locations was at the base of the Okemo Mountain Resort Access Road and the entrance to Okemo Marketplace, including the offices for Okemo Valley Regional Chamber of Commerce. A year later, Senator Peter Welch and Congresswoman Becca Balint came back to the site they toured right after the flood and visited with the chamber staff and Okemo Marketplace business owners. We brought a camera down to see what we could capture.
Hi, very nice to meet you, Becca Balint. I'm Tika Lang. Thank you very much.
Some press was gathered there to ask questions, including WCAX and WPTZ, and they allowed us to record their interviews.
You know, you just put too much of your blood, sweat, and tears into something that you would just let it go.
Yeah,
And the community that we serve
absolutely.
needs us.
And like Becca was just saying, did you have any
On the front door was a mud dam, about 4 feet. So the door didn't collapse. So we got water in here to about here. So all new floors, had new sheetrock a couple feet. Luckily, most of our stuff is elevated, so we didn't lose a ton in here. But you were over at Darkside, right?
Yes, oh my God.
So where they expanded to on that side, that's where we had 50 wood stove stored. So there was 4 feet of water in there. We lost everything. Dad had to be in a skid steer for 3 days, I think, Carol, right? Digging them out. So we had to dig them all out, knock the legs off, decommission them.
You're from Rutland? Yeah, I was born in Rutland.
You were? I love
Yeah.
Rutland. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Good people over there.
I guess the first thing is, a recent Vermont Public report said that FEMA admin costs were $80 million for this project, but only $40 million of that went to kind of the public. How should more money get to the people who were really experiencing this flood a year ago?
But what I think we're seeing is that the more we can have local control of that money and local implementation, the more efficient it's going to be and the quicker the job is going to get done. When I was here after the floods, there was a mountain of mud. The trestle across the road totally collapsed. And we're here with businesses that are back on their feet. And right here, the folks here described this as an opportunity to redesign. I mean, talk about a glass half full. So it's pretty inspiring.
Yeah. And in May, you, the congressional delegation, they all called out FEMA to fix some of these challenges Vermonters were having applying and getting aid to FEMA. How will some of those questions you guys were posing help the process in the coming years or in coming disasters?
Well, I think the big question on FEMA is the thing they do right after the event, the flood. They're pretty good at that. But then the long term, where you've got to fix the local infrastructure, you've got to be doing that day in and day out. I think much more of that responsibility and the funds that go with it should be made locally, give much more local control. So that's something I think our delegation will be pushing for, fundamental structural change and the downstream effects of how to deal with infrastructure damage.
What is going to be sort of at the forefront of your mind walking away from today? What's sticking with you the most?
Well, it's helping the communities rebuild with resilience. We heard that they, in the local community, are aware that a flood can happen again. So how do we rebuild in a way where we won't have the same kind of damage? And the complaints people have are practical ones. They have different FEMA administrators. They're told the rule is X one day and it's Y the next. And that's really unacceptable. So it's why I do think it's more important to give flexibility to local folks. If they'll get the job done.
Sure, and I know some folks were also saying there's sort of that divide between the town level recovery, state level, and then FEMA. Each level has its own sort of rules, right? And it's sort of hard to get them all to work together, right? Is there any way we could sort of better that?
Well, that's why I think we need local control. A lot of what we heard is that folks felt the state was very helpful and responsive. And that's all of us in Vermont trying to help the towns that got hammered and the homeowners and businesses that got hammered. But the deadlock is when you get into these bureaucratic snafus and you can't get an answer. You can't get a yes or a no in a timely way. And I really do believe you've got to just give much more responsibility and authority to the local leaders. They know what to do. They're accountable to their own citizens, and I think it'll work better.
Sure.
It's so important for us to come and hear directly from Vermonters and their stories of how they brought their businesses back, because the details are important. It's not enough to say, yes, we were able to go back. We want to know what systems worked, what didn't work. So it is important for us to be able to translate those stories back into action items, whether it's for FEMA or for the Small Business Association or for HUD. And it's just invaluable. There's nothing can substitute for being out in the community and hearing directly from people. One of the things that was so important for us to hear is that we need navigators. We need people that are helping small towns, villages here in Vermont to navigate all the red tape. And we'll do what we can to try to streamline the red tape. But if that is going to continue to be part of government programs and policies, we have to give local municipalities the tools to be able to navigate that. Because what happens is rural states like Vermont miss out because the towns and the villages don't have the capacity. So that was a really important message that we got today. And obviously we heard, similar to what Senator Welch said just a few minutes ago, is that we need to make sure that the money that is being dispersed, that it goes to those communities to spend it as they see wisely. We need that flexibility. We need that nimbleness. People on the ground know where to invest the money to get the most for the taxpayer's dollar. That's critically important. The other message I'm taking away today is that you could see so many people just decide to throw in the towel with their businesses. You wouldn't blame them, right? The floods they were devastating, the amount of mud in people's businesses and the building back. And they all said, no, we have an important part to play in our community. It's not just about the business themselves, but the way in which they fit into their community. And that's always very inspiring.
For sure. And a two-parter for me.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how soon after last year's flooding were you here at Okemo Marketplace? And two, just how great did that make it feel to see thriving businesses today in what feels like, a really quick turnaround, honestly?
Yeah, well, so I'm glad you mentioned it. So I used to direct a summer camp just right up the hill here in Mount Holly, and my daughter goes to camp in Plymouth. And so we were following this very closely because for a while the camps were cut off, because of this devastating rock slide and mudslide here. And so to see what it looked like in the days right after, and to see that despite the inundation of flood and rock and all of the product that was lost, people lost everything in their businesses, that the decision that they made was to continue to reinvest. Now, we want to support businesses in that way, but we also always have to be thinking about how do we build resiliency so that doesn't happen again, right? It's great that you've got this incredible spirit here in Vermont, but people shouldn't have to do that, right? So that we have to make sure that how we are building out in the future makes it so that that doesn't happen again. And that's what I know we're thinking very carefully about.